Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Midnight Slow Burn Stories podcast. An original Koi Rue production, all rights reserved.
Sarah meticulously adjusted the delicate lace on Emily's veil, her fingers trembling slightly. The ballroom buzzed with activity, florists arranging towering bouquets of white roses, caterers bustling with trays of champagne flutes, and Emily, radiant in her ivory gown, laughing with her bridesmaids. It was a scene of picture-perfect happiness, the kind Emily always seemed to effortlessly create. But beneath the surface, a quiet storm raged within Sarah. Emily, the golden child, the one who always shone brightest, was about to marry Mark, a man Sarah had always felt an inexplicable connection to. It wasn't that Sarah actively harbored feelings for Mark. She had diligently suppressed any such notions, burying them deep beneath layers of sisterly loyalty and self-denial. Still, there was a subtle awareness, a shared glance here and there, a comfortable silence that spoke volumes. Growing up, it had always been Emily first. Emily got the lead roles in the school plays, Emily won the academic awards, Emily attracted all the attention. Sarah was content to fade into the background, the quiet observer, the supportive sister. But tonight, surrounded by the extravagant display of Emily's impending nuptials, a familiar pang of resentment echoed in her chest. She watched Emily, her laughter echoing through the room, and a wave of sadness washed over her. It wasn't just about Mark. It was about the unspoken dynamics of their relationship, the subtle competition that had always simmered beneath the surface of their sisterly bond. Emily, oblivious to Sarah's inner turmoil, beckoned her over. "Sarah, darling, could you double-check the seating chart one last time? Mother is worried that Aunt Carol is too close to the band." Sarah forced a smile and nodded, pushing aside her own feelings to cater to Emily's needs, as she always did. As she walked towards the seating chart, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shatter the carefully constructed facade of happiness. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a secret waiting to be revealed. It was a night for confessions, for truths to surface, and Sarah had a sinking feeling that her life was about to change forever. The weight of the unspoken hung heavy in the air, a prelude to the storm that was brewing. The seating chart swam before Sarah's eyes, the names blurring into an indistinguishable mess. She needed to clear her head. Stepping out onto the terrace, she hoped the cool night air would provide some respite from the stifling emotions churning within her. As she leaned against the stone railing, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Mark. He looked different than he had earlier, his usual easy smile replaced with a furrowed brow and a haunted look in his eyes. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper above the gentle rustling of the trees. Sarah straightened up, a knot forming in her stomach. She had tried to avoid being alone with Mark throughout the entire wedding preparations, acutely aware of the magnetic pull between them. Their interactions had been brief, polite exchanges, filled with forced smiles and averted gazes. He would ask if she needed help carrying something or compliment her on the flower arrangements, and she would respond with curt thank yous, desperate to escape his presence. He was handsome, of course. Tall, with kind eyes and a disarming charm that had captivated Emily from the moment they met. But it was more than just physical attraction. There was an intellectual connection, a shared sense of humor, a comfortable understanding that she hadn't experienced with anyone else. She remembered a conversation they had shared months ago during Emily's birthday party. They had found themselves alone in the garden, discussing their favorite books. Mark had mentioned a lesser-known poet, one that Sarah had also admired for years. They had spent hours dissecting the poet's work, their voices hushed with excitement, completely oblivious to the party raging around them. It was a fleeting moment, but it had left a lasting impression, a spark of recognition that had ignited something within her. Now, standing before her under the cloak of darkness, he seemed different, vulnerable, lost. And Sarah knew, with a certainty that sent shivers down her spine, that something significant was about to happen. The polite facade was about to crumble, revealing the raw emotions that lay hidden beneath. The night, already charged with unspoken tension, was about to explode. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the turmoil within. "Mark," she said again, her voice barely audible, "what is it?" "What's wrong?" He took a step closer, closing the distance between them. The moonlight illuminated his face, highlighting the desperation in his eyes. He looked like a man on the edge, teetering on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. "I can't do it, Sarah," he blurted out, the words tumbling from his lips in a rush. "I can't marry Emily." Sarah recoiled as if struck. "What are you saying?" she whispered, her mind struggling to process his words. "I don't love her," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "I never have." The air crackled with a sudden, palpable tension. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. "Then why?" she stammered, the question hanging in the air, unfinished. "Because I thought it was the right thing to do," he said, his voice laced with regret. "Because she's perfect. Everyone expects it. But it's a lie, Sarah. It's all a lie." He took another step closer, his gaze locking with hers. "The truth is," he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "I've always been in love with you." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Her world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew, everything she had tried to suppress, was now crashing down around her. The unspoken connection, the shared moments, the magnetic pull, it all made sense now in a way that both terrified and exhilarated her. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. "Please, Sarah," he begged, his voice raw with emotion. "Don't let me make the biggest mistake of my life. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me there's a chance for us." The ballroom lights seemed to dim, the sounds of the wedding preparations fading into a distant hum. In that moment, there was only Sarah and Mark, and the devastating truth that threatened to shatter everything. The shock of his confession was like a physical blow. Sarah stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she gasped, shaking her head vehemently. "You can't say that. You can't do this to Emily." Her first instinct was to protect her sister, to shield her from the devastating pain that Mark's words would inflict. Emily, who had always been so confident, so sure of herself, would be shattered by this revelation. "How could you?" Sarah demanded, her voice rising in anger. "Tomorrow is her wedding day. You're about to destroy her life." "And what about my life, Sarah?" Mark countered, his voice laced with desperation. "Am I supposed to live a lie, trapped in a marriage with someone I don't love? Is that what you want for me?" "It's not about what I want. Sarah exclaimed, her eyes blazing with fury. "It's about Emily. She loves you. She's planned this day for months. You can't just change your mind at the last minute. Seeing you these past few weeks, helping with the wedding, it's been torture," Mark confessed, his voice cracking with emotion. "Every smile, every shared glance, it's just confirmed what I already knew. I can't marry Emily, not when it's you I truly want." Sarah felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, suffocating her. She was caught between her loyalty to her sister and the undeniable pull she felt towards Mark. It was an impossible situation, a cruel twist of fate that threatened to destroy everything she held dear. "You're being selfish," she accused, her voice trembling. "You're only thinking about yourself. What about the consequences? What about the pain you'll cause?" "I know it will hurt her," Mark conceded, his voice softening. "But it will hurt her even more if I go through with this charade. She deserves to be with someone who truly loves her, not someone who's settling for second best." Sarah wanted to scream, to lash out, to make him understand the gravity of his actions. But a part of her, a small, treacherous part, understood exactly what he was saying. A part of her had always wondered what it would be like to be with Mark, to explore the connection that had always simmered beneath the surface. But that was a fantasy, a forbidden desire that she had always kept locked away. Now, that fantasy was threatening to become a reality, and she didn't know if she was strong enough to resist it. Mark stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "I know it sounds crazy, Sarah. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't ignore this anymore. I've tried, believe me, I've tried. But every time I look at you, every time we talk, I know I'm making a mistake. Emily is wonderful, she is, but she's not *you. He reached for her hand, his fingers brushing against hers. Sarah flinched, pulling away as if burned. "Don't," she said sharply, "don't touch me." "Sarah, please," he begged, his voice thick with emotion. "Just hear me out, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," Sarah retorted, her voice trembling. "You're engaged to my sister, you're supposed to be in love with her. You're ruining everything." "I'm not ruining anything," Mark insisted, taking another step closer. "I'm trying to prevent a disaster. Emily deserves to be with someone who loves her wholeheartedly, not someone who's settling out of obligation." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I need you to understand how serious I am. I'm willing to give up everything for you, Sarah. I'm willing to walk away from this wedding, from my family, from everything I've ever known, if it means I can be with you." He dropped to his knees, taking her hands in his. "Please, Sarah," he pleaded, his eyes filled with desperation. "Run away with me. Let's leave all of this behind and start a new life together, just you and me. We can go anywhere, do anything. Just say yes." Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. He was kneeling before her, begging her to abandon her sister and run away with him. It was a scene straight out of a movie, a romantic fantasy come to life. But this was real life, and the consequences of her actions would be devastating. She looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, any hint of regret. But all she saw was sincerity, a burning passion that mirrored the feelings she had tried so hard to suppress. "Get up, Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Get up right now. You can't do this." She tried to pull her hands away, but he held on tight. Please, Sarah, he repeated, his voice cracking with emotion. Don't let fear control your life. Take a chance on happiness. Take a chance on us. But you don't understand, Sarah, Mark continued, his grip tightening on her hands. Emily, she doesn't really no me. She sees the person she wants me to be, not the person I actually am. But he paused, a shadow crossing his face. She pressured me into this, the wedding, the house, the whole perfect picture. It's what she wanted. And I went along with it because I thought it would make her happy. But it's not making me happy, Sarah. It's suffocating me. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. Remember that trip we talked about to Italy? The one we both dreamed of taking, exploring the ancient ruins and eating pasta by the sea. Emily wouldn't even consider it, said it was too adventurous, too messy. But you understood, you shared that dream with me. He painted a vivid picture of their potential life together, filled with shared passions, intellectual stimulation, and genuine connection. He spoke of quiet evenings spent reading by the fire, of spontaneous adventures to far-off lands, of a love built on mutual respect and understanding. Emily and I were not compatible, Sarah. We want different things. We have different values. She wants the perfect life, the perfect husband, the perfect family. But I want something real, something authentic, and that's what I see with you. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Did you know she doesn't even like the same kind of music I do? She pretends to for my sake, but I can tell. She rolls her eyes when I put on my favorite records. With you, it's different. You get me, Sarah. You understand me in a way that no one else ever has. He revealed snippets of their relationship, carefully chosen details that highlighted their incompatibility. Emily's controlling tendencies, her superficial interests, her lack of genuine understanding. He wasn't trying to demonize her, but rather to illustrate the fundamental flaws in their connection. I know this is a lot to ask, he said, his voice laced with vulnerability. But I truly believe that we're meant to be together, Sarah. We have a connection that's rare and precious. Please, don't let it go to waste. Don't let me marry the wrong person. Give us a chance, please. His words hung in the air, a desperate plea that resonated with Sarah's deepest desires. The temptation was almost unbearable. A fleeting memory flashed through Sarah's mind. A summer afternoon years ago. She was helping Mark fix a leaky faucet in Emily's garden. Emily, impatient and uninterested in the task, had flitted off to chat with friends, leaving Sarah and Mark to grapple with the stubborn plumbing. The two of them were kneeling on the damp grass, surrounded by tools and a growing puddle of water. Mark, his brow furrowed in concentration, accidentally sprayed Sarah with a burst of water. She gasped, sputtering and laughing. He immediately apologized, his face flushing with embarrassment. But then he started to laugh too, his laughter infectious and genuine. They both ended up soaked and covered in mud, their initial frustration dissolving into shared amusement. In that moment, as they stood side by side, dripping wet and covered in dirt, Sarah had felt a connection with Mark, a sense of camaraderie and understanding that transcended mere friendship. He had looked at her with a warmth in his eyes, a spark of recognition that had sent a shiver down her spine. It was a small, insignificant moment, easily dismissed as nothing more than a shared mishap. But for Sarah, it had been a glimpse into a different reality, a possibility that had lingered in the back of her mind ever since. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated connection, a shared joke that had revealed a deeper understanding. The memory faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Sarah breathless and disoriented. It was a reminder of the foundation upon which Mark's feelings were built, a testament to the undeniable connection that had always existed between them. Back on the terrace, Mark was still kneeling, his eyes fixed on hers. The weight of his plea, combined with the resurfaced memory, was almost too much to bear. Sarah felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, one wrong step away from plunging into an abyss of chaos and regret. The temptation to say yes, to abandon her responsibilities and embrace the unknown, was almost overwhelming. But the image of Emily, radiant and trusting, flashed before her eyes, a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. The decision was hers, and the fate of 3 lives hung in the balance. The battle raged within Sarah, a fierce tug-of-war between her desires and her duty. Part of her, the long-suppressed, yearning part, desperately wanted to say yes. To run away with Mark, to finally embrace the possibility of a love that felt so right, so true. She imagined a life filled with laughter, adventure, and a deep, unwavering connection, a life that had always seemed just out of reach. But the other part of her, the loyal, responsible part, recoiled at the thought of betraying Emily. Emily, who had always been so good to her, so generous, so supportive, even if she had also been the center of attention, the one who always shone the brightest. To inflict such pain on her sister, to shatter her dreams on the eve of her wedding, was unthinkable. The potential fallout was terrifying. The scandal, the heartbreak, the shattered family relationships. She imagined her parents' disappointment, her friends' disapproval, the irreversible damage to her bond with Emily. The weight of those consequences pressed down on her, threatening to suffocate her. She thought of all the times Emily had confided in her, sharing her hopes and fears about the future. She remembered the countless hours they had spent planning the wedding, poring over magazines, and dreaming of the perfect day. How could she betray that trust? How could she knowingly inflict such pain on someone she loved? But then she thought of herself. Of the years she had spent playing second fiddle to Emily, always sacrificing her own desires for the sake of her sister's happiness. Of the unspoken feelings she had harbored for Mark, carefully concealed beneath layers of loyalty and self-denial. Was she destined to live a life of quiet resignation, always putting others' needs before her own? Did she deserve a chance at happiness, even if it meant causing pain to someone else? The internal conflict was tearing her apart. She felt like she was being pulled in 2 different directions, her heart and her mind at war with each other. She longed for a clear answer, a simple solution that would allow her to reconcile her desires with her duty. But there was no easy way out. Whatever decision she made, someone was going to get hurt. The weight of that realization was almost unbearable. She closed her eyes, desperately searching for guidance, for a sign that would point her in the right direction. But all she found was silence, a deafening silence that amplified the turmoil within. The clock was ticking and the wedding was just hours away. She had to make a choice, and she had to make it soon. "It's not that simple, Mark," Sarah hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced nervously towards the ballroom, praying that no one had overheard their heated exchange. You can't just expect me to throw everything away on a whim. This isn't a movie. This is real life. But what if real life is a lie, Sarah? Mark countered, his voice rising in frustration. What if you've been living a lie for years, always putting Emily's needs before your own? Don't you deserve to be happy? Don't you deserve to be with someone who truly loves and appreciates you? He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. Think about it, Sarah. How many times has Emily really seen you? How many times has she truly acknowledged your feelings, your dreams, your desires? She's always been so focused on herself, on her own happiness, that she's never really noticed you. He was hitting a nerve, tapping into the deep-seated resentment that Sarah had tried so hard to suppress. The years of being overlooked, of being overshadowed by Emily, bubbled to the surface. She loves the attention, Sarah, Mark continued, his voice laced with a subtle edge. She loves being the center of the universe, and I'm just another star in her orbit, a trophy to be displayed. But you see me for who I am. You understand me in a way that she never will. He subtly planted seeds of doubt, questioning Emily's true character and her motives. He hinted at her manipulative tendencies, her desire for control, her superficiality. He wasn't outright accusing her of anything, but rather subtly suggesting that she wasn't as perfect as she seemed. Don't you ever wonder why she always needs to be the best, Sarah? He asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Don't you ever wonder why she always needs to be the center of attention? Maybe she's not as secure as she seems. Maybe she needs all that validation to feel worthy. He paused, letting his words sink in. And what about you, Sarah? What makes you worthy? Are you just content to live in her shadow, always sacrificing your own happiness for her sake? His words were like poison, seeping into Sarah's mind, eroding her loyalty and fueling her resentment. The tension between them crackled in the air, thick and suffocating. The argument was escalating, fueled by years of unspoken feelings and suppressed emotions. The wedding, the perfect facade, was threatening to crumble beneath the weight of their explosive confrontation. Sarah stared at Mark, her breath coming in ragged gasps. His words had hit their mark, stirring up a maelstrom of emotions that threatened to consume her. The years of suppressed feelings, the unspoken desires, the simmering resentment, it was all bubbling to the surface, blurring the lines between right and wrong, between duty and desire. He reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. His touch was warm, electric, sending shivers down her spine. "Don't you feel it, Sarah?" he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. "Don't you feel this connection between us? It's real, it's powerful, and it's undeniable." She looked into his eyes, and for a moment she saw a reflection of her own soul, a longing, a yearning, a desperate desire for something more. The world around them seemed to fade away, the sounds of the wedding preparations dissolving into a distant hum. There was only Sarah and Mark, and the magnetic pull that drew them together. He lowered his head, his lips hovering just above hers. Sarah closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to pull away, to resist the temptation that threatened to consume her. But another part of her, the rebellious, adventurous part, urged her to surrender, to finally embrace the possibility of a love that felt so right. His lips brushed against hers, a soft, tentative touch that sent a jolt of electricity through her veins. It was a kiss that had been years in the making, a culmination of unspoken feelings and suppressed desires. For a fleeting moment, Sarah allowed herself to succumb to the temptation, to revel in the sensation of his lips on hers, the warmth of his embrace. But then a sound shattered the spell. A door creaked open inside the ballroom, followed by a woman's voice calling out, "Sarah, is that you? I need you to help me with the seating arrangements." Sarah's eyes flew open, her heart leaping into her throat. She stumbled backward, pulling away from Mark as if burned. The reality of the situation crashed down on her, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on her with crushing force. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. What have I done? The near kiss, a moment of weakness, had brought her back to reality, a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. The spell was broken, and the decision she had to make loomed before her, more daunting than ever. "It can't happen, Mark," Sarah said, her voice firm despite the tremor that ran through her body. She stepped back, putting distance between them. "I can't do this to Emily. I won't." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and resolve. What happened just now, it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It doesn't change anything. "But Sarah," Mark began, his voice pleading. "No, Mark," she interrupted, cutting him off. "It's over. You need to tell Emily the truth. You owe her that much." "And what about us?" he asked, his voice laced with desperation. "Don't we owe it to ourselves to explore this? To see where it could lead?" "There is no us, Mark," Sarah said, her voice hardening. "There never was. You're marrying my sister tomorrow. That's the reality. And I won't be a part of destroying her life." She knew her words were harsh, but she needed to be firm, to shut down any remaining hope he might have harbored. She couldn't allow herself to waver, to succumb to the temptation that still lingered within her. "You have to tell her, Mark," she continued, her voice softening slightly. "She deserves to know the truth, no matter how painful it may be. She deserves to be with someone who truly loves her, not someone who's settling for second best." But what if telling her destroys everything?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "What if it ruins her life, her happiness? Can you live with that, Sarah?" "It's not my decision to make, Mark," she said, her voice filled with a weary resignation. "It's yours. You made a commitment to her, and you need to be honest with her, no matter the consequences." She looked at him, her eyes pleading with him to understand. "I know this is hard, Mark. I know it's painful. But it's the right thing to do. You owe it to her, and you owe it to yourself." She turned to leave, her heart aching with a mixture of regret and relief. "I can't be a part of this, Mark," she said, her voice barely audible. "I can't watch you marry my sister, knowing how you truly feel. It would destroy me." She walked towards the ballroom, leaving Mark alone on the terrace, his future uncertain, his heart broken. She had made her decision, and it was the hardest thing she had ever done. But she knew, deep down, that it was the right one. She had chosen loyalty over desire, duty over happiness. And as she stepped back into the glittering ballroom, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Mark stared at Sarah, his face etched with despair. Her rejection was a blow he hadn't anticipated, a final crushing defeat that extinguished any remaining flicker of hope. "So that's it then?" he asked, his voice hollow. "You're just going to let Emily control your life forever. You're going to let fear dictate your decisions." He stepped closer, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "I thought you were different, Sarah. I thought you were brave enough to take a chance on happiness. But I guess I was wrong. You're just as afraid as everyone else." He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You know, Emily always said you were too timid, too cautious. She said you were afraid of taking risks, afraid of stepping outside your comfort zone. I didn't want to believe her, but I guess she was right all along." His words stung, hitting Sarah where it hurt the most. She had always been aware of Emily's perception of her, the subtle condescension that had always lurked beneath her sister's affection. And now Mark was confirming her worst fears, revealing that Emily's assessment of her was accurate. "You're letting her win, Sarah," Mark said, his voice laced with accusation. "You're letting her control your life, even when it means sacrificing your own happiness. You're letting her dictate your decisions, even when it means living a lie." He turned away, his shoulders slumping with defeat. "I can't believe I was so stupid," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I thought you were different. I thought you were strong enough to break free, but you're just as trapped as I am." He walked towards the edge of the terrace, his silhouette outlined against the moonlit sky. "I don't know what I'm going to do," he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can go through with this wedding. But I can't stay here, Sarah. I can't watch you live a life of quiet desperation, always wondering what if." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Goodbye, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with a finality that sent a chill down her spine. "I hope you find the courage to be happy someday, but I don't think I can be around to watch you pretend." With that, he turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Sarah alone on the terrace, her heart aching with regret and uncertainty. His words echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of the choice she had made and the life she had potentially sacrificed. The future was uncertain for both of them, and Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The weight of her decision settled upon her, heavy and inescapable. The terrace felt empty and cold after Mark's departure. Sarah stood there for a long time, the silence broken only by the gentle rustling of the trees. She was emotionally drained, her body trembling with exhaustion. The events of the past hour had taken their toll, leaving her feeling raw and vulnerable. She had made her decision, but the relief she had expected never came. Instead, she was overwhelmed by a wave of regret and uncertainty. Had she done the right thing? Had she sacrificed her own happiness for the sake of her sister's? Or had she simply been too afraid to take a chance on something real? She knew she had to protect Emily. She couldn't stand by and watch her sister's heart be broken, especially not on her wedding day. Emily deserved to be happy, even if it meant sacrificing her own desires. But as she thought about Mark, about the life they could have had together, a pang of regret shot through her heart. What if she had made the wrong choice? What if she had thrown away her only chance at true happiness? What if she was destined to live a life of quiet desperation, always wondering what if? She thought about Mark's words, about Emily's perception of her, about her own fear of taking risks. Had she allowed Emily to control her life for too long? Had she become so accustomed to playing the role of the supportive sister that she had forgotten how to fight for her own happiness? She closed her eyes, trying to block out the conflicting emotions that swirled within her. She needed to be strong for Emily's sake. She needed to put her own feelings aside and focus on supporting her sister through whatever lay ahead. But as she walked back towards the ballroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. She had chosen duty over desire, loyalty over love. And as she prepared to face the wedding day, she couldn't help but wonder if she would ever be able to forgive herself. The image of Mark's despairing face was burned into her memory, a constant reminder of the life she had chosen not to live. The weight of her decision was heavy, almost unbearable. And as she stepped back into the glittering ballroom, she knew that her life would never be the same again. The secrets she now carried, the choices she had made, would forever alter the course of her destiny. The morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within Sarah's heart. The air was filled with a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation, the final preparations for the wedding now in full swing. The bridal suite buzzed with activity. Hairstylists curled and teased, makeup artists applied foundation and blush, and bridesmaids flitted about in matching silk robes, their laughter echoing through the room. Emily, radiant in her white silk robe, sat in the center of it all, her face glowing with happiness. She looked like a princess, Sarah thought, untouchable and serene. It was impossible to imagine her world being shattered, her dreams being crushed. But Sarah knew the truth, the devastating secret that threatened to unravel everything. As she watched Emily, a wave of guilt washed over her. How could she allow her sister to walk down the aisle, to commit herself to a man who didn't truly love her? How could she stand by and watch her make the biggest mistake of her life? But she had made her choice. She had decided to protect Emily, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. And now she had to live with the consequences. She forced a smile and approached Emily, offering her a glass of champagne. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Emily beamed at her, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Thank you, Sarah," she said, taking the glass. "I'm so happy you're here. I couldn't imagine getting married without you by my side." Sarah's heart twisted with guilt. She was deceiving her sister, keeping a secret that could change her life forever. But she couldn't bring herself to tell her the truth, not on her wedding day. Throughout the morning, Sarah moved through the motions, helping Emily with her dress, adjusting her veil, and offering words of encouragement. But beneath the surface, she was a mess. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts, her heart ached with regret, and her stomach churned with anxiety. She kept a close eye on Mark, watching his every move. He looked pale and drawn, his eyes filled with a haunted expression. He avoided her gaze, his body language conveying a sense of deep unease. She knew that he had to tell Emily the truth, but she couldn't bring herself to interfere. It was his decision to make, and she had to respect his choice, no matter how painful it might be. The wedding day was here, and Sarah was trapped, a silent observer, waiting to see what would unfold. The weight of her secret pressed down on her, heavy and inescapable. The wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin at noon. As the clock ticked closer to the hour, the tension in the bridal suite became almost unbearable. Sarah watched Emily, her face a mask of forced composure, trying to decipher any sign of what was to come. Had Mark told her? Was she aware of the devastating truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect day? Or was she still blissfully ignorant, about to walk into a nightmare? Sarah didn't know. And the uncertainty was driving her mad. She longed to pull Emily aside to warn her, to prepare her for the potential heartbreak that lay ahead. But she couldn't. She had made her choice, and she had to let things play out as they were meant to. The guests began to arrive, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The ballroom was transformed into a fairy tale setting, adorned with flowers, candles, and shimmering decorations. Everything was perfect, except for the secret that threatened to destroy it all. Sarah stood near the window, watching as the guests took their seats. She scanned the crowd, searching for Mark, but he was nowhere to be seen. Had he run away? Had he decided to spare Emily the pain of a public humiliation? Or was he simply waiting for the opportune moment to reveal the truth? The music began to play, signaling the start of the ceremony. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment of truth. Emily took her father's arm and began to walk down the aisle. She looked radiant, her face glowing with happiness. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking towards a precipice, about to plunge into an abyss of heartbreak and despair. Sarah watched, her breath held captive in her chest as Emily approached the altar. She scanned the crowd, searching for Mark, and then she saw him. He was standing at the altar, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. He looked at Emily, his expression unreadable. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. What was he going to do? Was he going to go through with the ceremony, knowing that he didn't love Emily? Or was he going to reveal the truth, shattering her dreams and destroying her happiness? The music swelled, the priest began to speak, and the fate of 3 lives hung in the balance. Sarah could only wait, watch, and wonder what would happen next. The suspense was almost unbearable. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. The wedding day had arrived, and everything was about to change. The priest's voice droned on, reciting the familiar vows. Sarah watched Emily and Mark, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the candlelight. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent undercurrent that threatened to disrupt the carefully orchestrated scene. Would Mark say, "I do"? Would Emily unknowingly commit herself to a life of unhappiness? Or would something, somehow, intervene? Sarah didn't know. And as the priest turned to Mark and asked the fateful question, she could only hold her breath and wait. "Mark, do you take Emily to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on Mark, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing with possibilities. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Mark opened his mouth to speak. But the story ends here, unresolved, the answer to the question left hanging in the air. Sarah reflected on the events of the past 24 hours, the secrets that had been revealed, the choices that had been made, and the consequences that were yet to come. She thought about her relationship with Emily, the years of sibling rivalry and unspoken feelings that had shaped their lives. She thought about Mark, the man she had secretly longed for, the man who had begged her to abandon everything and run away with him. Had she made the right decision? Had she protected Emily, or had she simply sacrificed her own happiness? Had she been brave, or had she been a coward? She didn't know. And as she stood there in the midst of the glittering wedding, surrounded by laughter and celebration, she couldn't help but wonder if she would ever find the answers she sought. The secrets that bound them together, the choices they had made, would forever alter the course of their lives. The story ends with a sense of unresolved tension, a lingering question that hangs heavy in the air. Had Sarah protected her sister, or had she sacrificed her own chance at happiness? Had she made the right choice, or had she made the biggest mistake of her life? The answers remained elusive, lost in the unspoken words, the unfulfilled desires, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The wedding day had arrived and everything had changed. But the true consequences of those changes were yet to be revealed. The story was over, but the questions lingered, a haunting reminder of the choices we make and the secrets we keep.
Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, remember that beneath every perfect facade lies a complex reality, and the pursuit of happiness is rarely a straightforward path.